Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Skill Up session. My name is Emily Sprenger. I'm a graduate learning specialist and very excited to have Dr. Mary Streit come back. Presented for us before in the past, and she's just a wonderful professor at National University, thoughtful, engaging, and I'm excited for you guys to be able to spend some time with her today during this hour. So, very brief housekeeping items. We are recording today's session. I will post this in the Skill Up section of our center. And we want to have you have conversations in the chat. So you're welcome to do that. If you do have questions, please pop them in the Q&A just so I don't lose them. But I'll do my best to monitor the chat as questions may come in through that platform as well too. And we do have our scrolling subtitles going on today as well. So you can enable those should you want to for your viewing option. And I think, Dr. Streit, that about does it from my end. If anyone needs me, you're welcome to find me in the chat. Otherwise, I will take questions as Dr. Streit decides to pause as time permits. Thank you all for being here. Dr. Streit?
Hi, everyone. So I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you all for being here today. I am in New York. So I just wanted to share that with you because I've been told sometimes I talk a little quickly. So I'm working on talking a little slower. So if you need me to say something again, and yes, it is a stereotype, but I think in my case, it does tend to be true. Just let me know and I will repeat it or say something again. I'm working on it. We all have things we're working on, I'm sure. All right, so let me get the next page. Okay, so what I wanted to focus on for today is a couple of learning outcomes or things I really want you to come with an understanding of after you're finished, with our course today. So the first thing is, what is the average attention span in the USA today? And then what might be some contributing factors to the changes that we're noting? And then the last thing is, what does the research evidence suggest you can do to limit your distractions and stay focused? So just curious, how are you all feeling about this? Do any of you feel like you're having more difficulty lately staying focused? And are you feeling like there's a lot of things that are trying to pull at your attention and there's a lot of distraction and things going on in your, how is everyone feeling about that?
And you are more than welcome to put in the chat or use your reactions in your Zoom account. And then as time permits too, if you have a question, you're welcome to raise your hand and I will either find you in the chat. We see some emojis popping up, some wow faces, absolutely too many distractions. Yes, 100%. Yes, the internet is a very big distraction. That's some of the responses at this point.
So, okay, so you're feeling it too. I think I am also. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and then what are some things that you can do to try to help you. And some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today is a little surprising. I was like, what? Really? I didn't know. So I think you might be interested. So let me go on the next page. My screen froze 1 second. Okay, so has the average attention span changed in the US? And it most definitely has. According to Gloria Mark, there has been a significant downward trend. So just to kind of give you some previous benchmarks, in 2004, it was about 2.5 minutes. So that means I probably still have your attention now, but I'm starting to maybe lose it. And that was in 2004. In 2012, it was 1.15 minutes, so a little over a minute. Sadly, within the past 5 or 6 years, the average attention span in the United States for adults hovers around, you ready? 40 to 47 seconds, less than a minute. Is anybody else shocked by this?
I can share that I don't like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really too surprised because I do find myself sometimes getting distracted. And I was doing this presentation I was sharing with Emily before we started, and I was kind of laughing at myself. I'm like, you're getting distracted again, get focused. Like, it's like being more aware of it, but it really is becoming a huge problem. So what is causing this change? You ready? Dun, dun, dun. Screen time. I'm sure you're not all surprised by that. So spending time on screens, believe it or not, is the #1 reason why we are all having a lot of problems staying focused. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about. So of all the different screens that you use, the #1 most problematic are these things. How many of you right now have your cell phone on right next to you? Have you looked at it within the past minute or so while we've been in? It's okay if you have, I won't be offended. It happens. I think part of it too, when you're in a Zoom meeting, sometimes I feel like it's, oh, the phone's right there. Like I'm kind of listening, but I'm texting this person, or I'm in a meeting, but I'm writing an email at the same time. It's like we're not in the present moment. We're all doing like all these other things. And cell phones are really fun. They make happy songs, they're visually stimulating, they make little noises like ding, you have a new message, or it vibrates, it shakes it's trying to get your attention. And it's saying, hey, there's something new and exciting. Look at me, look at me, look at me. And what do? We all look at it and we open it up and we read it, because when something new grabs our brain's attention, it releases what's called dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter in your brain. And it actually makes us feel good, and it makes us feel pleasure. It stimulates the addictive pathways in the brain. And the same pathways that are involved when people have addictions to drugs and alcohol are being activated when we're using our cell phones. So just a question, when was the last time you were without your cell phone? Did you ever leave the house without it recently? I actually did about a week ago, and I was really stressed. I was going to church with my family, and I realized I was rushing, because I'm always rushing. I have to work on that. And I realized when we were in the car, I'm like, I left my phone at home. Oh no, I was panicked because we're addicted to it. And I was okay. I calmed down and I managed and I survived. But we really are becoming a lot more addicted to it. So how about, have you turned it off? Do you turn off your phone regularly? Does anyone do that? Getting a couple of nods. Couple of nods yes, a couple of nods no. So it might be something that you want to think about doing as a way to help you to kind of break this addiction. It really is a true addiction. So what is going on as a result of this addiction to our phones? We have people have problems now with online shopping, gambling, gaming, and the biggest problem is excessive social media use. It's really causing a lot of mental health issues and problems for people as well. But you can actually become addicted to it. All the likes, oh, I got all these likes, everybody likes me, oh, I feel good now. And it's problematic, however, because with social media, I think, especially for young adults, they're learning to get validation from outside of themselves for things that they're doing or saying, instead of looking internally to kind of believe this is something I really truly believe in, and not being concerned about what other people think or say. And all these other addictions and problems that are occurring, it is leading to a lot of mental health issues, and our happiness levels are really tanking. They've gone down quite a bit. Believe it or not, there's a global happiness center report comes out every year, and it's been going down. So not to blame everything on the cell phones. I mean, we are still in charge of our happiness too, but I think we need to be a little bit more aware and conscious of what we're doing. Okay, so do you know how much time on average you spend each day on your phone? Does anybody here monitor that, or are you aware? Yeah, I don't know if you have an iPhone. I'm not sure about the Android. I do apologize for the Droid people in the room. I'm not prejudiced, but I'm just not aware how to do it. But if you go into settings on your iPhone, if you have your phones handy, which you probably do, if you want to pop it out, you can. If you go into settings and then you scroll down a little bit, there's a little I guess a little, like, looks like a little hourglass, and it says screen time, and you can click on that, and then it tells you what is the daily average of screen time. This is every day, how much time you're spending. The recommendation is it should be anywhere between 2 to 4 hours a day. If it's over that, I know it sounds like a lot, right? If it's over that, you want to try to minimize that, and you want to try to work and put some strategies in place to do that. And in the screen time place, there's a way you can do that. You can schedule time away for the screen. You can limit your use of certain apps. You can, turn it off at certain times. So there's a way that you can actually actively manage this a little bit more. So that way you are more in charge of your phone instead of it the other way around, which I think a lot of people don't even realize it. It's kind of this very subtle kind of, the phone is kind of taking over and you don't even realize it. Anybody want to share how much screen time there is, their averages? Anybody feeling comfortable or uncomfortable sharing? You don't have to.
I am going to be honest. I have a Droid.
Okay.
Everyone wants me to get an iPhone. I'm kind of just not doing it.
No.
But I was trying to figure out where I could find on here
Thank
what
you.
the average screen time is.
Yeah, so for the Droid people in the room, I do apologize. I just don't know. So we will get information for you on how to do that as well, and monitor that.
Someone mentioned an average was 5 hours. And
That's
then
okay.
just a quick comment I wanted to add in here. Someone had mentioned in their household that they have a box where they put all of the cell phones in the house at 7 p.m. at night. And I just thought that was a really cool
Wonderful.
idea. Another person mentioned 4.5 hours.
That's really good. Yeah. Is anybody under 4 hours? We have like a prize we could give someone.
and maybe if someone's over, yeah, Amy says probably me. And then maybe if someone's over 4 hours or more than 5, they might not feel comfortable to share.
Right,
So
right. Yeah, we don't want to have any kind of, because sometimes people are doing other things on their phone too. Like I sometimes will do my online grocery shopping, believe it or not, because I'm trying to find ways to save time. I'm a definite what they call type A personality. I'm very like focusing on how I can manage my time well and efficiently. So that's one thing I do to try to manage my time. So I'm using that as my excuse for why my hours were a little higher. Okay, so there's some more statistics here. According to the CDC, and this is from 2022, so it's not for this year, the average screen time by age. And this to me was shocking. 2 to 4 years old are spending 2.5 hours a day, like toddlers, on their phones. Is anybody else surprised by that? I was shocked when I read that.
Screen time, I would probably be agreeing with that, because I don't know about cell phone, but screen time, was this one cell phone or screen time?
Screen time. No, screen time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then 5 to 8 years, around 3 hours. 8 to 12 years of age is about 5 hours. And then adults, 18 and over, it's all of us. It's about, the average is between 6 to 8 hours a day. So outside of working at your job, the number 2 thing that you're doing and spending the most time on is engaging with screens. And again, we know the research suggests that if you want to be happy, this is based on Laurie Santos' work out of the Happiness Lab from Yale University, that you want to spend time working on and cultivating relationships with other people in real life and engaging in activities in real life that you enjoy. And this seems to be suggesting that this is a lot less likely to occur than ever before. So it kind of makes sense that our happiness level is going down as a result. And again, I think this addiction, this kind of cycle where you're, on your phone and doing all these things, it's almost like you're not even thinking about it. It's almost like this kind of unconscious thing that we're doing. And we have to kind of stop ourselves and say, hey, let me put the phone away. And be present with the people that you are in the room with, or in the meeting with, whatever, in the moment. It's really hard for people to do that today. Just is interesting. And I think the one research finding is that the brains of children and young adults up to ages 25 are not yet fully developed. I remember when I was teaching undergraduate students, they would all freak out when I would because I'd be talking about addictions and drug and alcohol use, and they'd be like, "Oh no, what have I done to my brains?" Because they're all out partying and all that. But it's true for cell phones too. And a part of the brain that's called the executive function in your brain is the part of the brain that seems to be impacted the most by all the screen time, especially cell phone use. And the executive function is the part of the brain that really tells you what you should focus on or what you should pay attention to. So what have we been teaching these young adults to pay attention to? Screens, phones, texts. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but a lot of younger adults will often prefer texting to talking. And I remember saying that to, I forget, I was talking to somebody and they're like, oh yeah, I was just talking to someone. I'm like, really? I didn't hear you talking to anyone. I'm like, do you mean you were texting them? And they're like, yeah, same thing. I'm like, no, it's not the same thing. It's very different. It's not the same. But in their mind, they were talking to that person because they were texting them. And I thought that was so interesting how they have this very different perception. Because you do lose something, I think, when you're not communicating live and in person. Okay, so that was all the bad news. So what can you do to try to manage this, to help you to stay focused? So the number one thing, you want to try to limit your screen time. Like I said, anywhere between 2 to 4 hours a day. And try to at least first get some data and figure out how much time you are spending. If it's really high, don't stress, don't get too upset, and just know that awareness, this is the very first step towards any kind of change that you're going to implement in your life. So being aware is really the very beginning phase of change, and then work on that. Prioritize your relationships with your friends, your family. When you're with other people, turn your phones off. Be present with them. Don't respond to texts from your friends or all that other stuff. It's a little bit rude, I think, sometimes when people do that as well. But I'm an older generation, so maybe that's my own personal bias. But try to be really fully present. You're going to miss things otherwise. You're going to be kind of distracted. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but you're going to be trying to kind of do two things at once. And what happens usually when you're trying to do two things at once, you're doing them both fairly poorly. So do your best to work on that. Maybe try to turn your phone off throughout the day. Gradually taper off, though. Just like any addiction, you don't want to go cold turkey because you're going to feel like, this doesn't feel good. And you're going to really be looking for your phone. You're going to miss it. You're going to have a hard time. You're going to have a little bit of cell phone withdrawal. So we don't want that. Also, you want to quit or limit your use of social media. Less is more here. Much of the research is out there suggests that the number one thing that you can do to improve your mental health is to stop using social media, which is really interesting and fascinating. And I could talk about a whole nother webinar as to why, but really you want to work on limiting that as much as you can. How many of you do use social media? Does anyone here not use it at all? I don't know, now I made a stigma about it, so people don't want to share, but I'm just curious, has anyone changed their habits with social media where they're not using it as much?
There was someone who had mentioned, oh, go ahead, Elizabeth, can you unmute? Oh, sorry, I pressed the wrong button. Elizabeth Peters, are you able to unmute by chance?
Yes, I have.
Great.
Normally during school time, yes, I'm on social media. Sorry about that. Hi, my name is Elizabeth. I'm a student here at National University. This is my final year. So what I do is during school time, I delete all the social media apps. And then when we have the school break, that's when I upload them again on my phone or anything. But again, there's one, the comment I added in within the chat was that I'm practicing muting my phone until I feel like, okay, now I can return phone calls, I can make a phone. My mind is settled where I don't have so much information in my head to be this.
Yeah, that's smart because you're taking control back. Now you're in charge. You're
Thank
not
you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, that's smart.
Absolutely. And Zoanne, are you able to unmute?
Yes, ma'am. So I want to challenge on the social media as far as being a negative effect. Depends on who you're talking to. For me, as a homebound person, social media is my connection. So it is important to me. And it is the way I connect with people. So I can see in the broad picture, yes, but maybe not quite such an umbrella effect.
Yeah, I think I was talking about excessive use of social media, but you're right. I think there are some people who are able to use that in a healthy way. because they have other limitations. A lot of the research suggests that real life contact with people is actually better for our mental health and well-being, of course. But if you're limited physically by other mobility issues or things like this, then it can be healthy. The problem is we engage in a lot of social comparisons, and people can do a lot of upward comparisons. They tend to do a lot more upward comparisons, and a lot of anxiety-driven behavior occurs for people on social media. So I've been working with students doing some research and dissertation on this for a couple of years now. So that's why I could spend a whole seminar talking about this, but for the average person, it really is better for your overall mental health and well-being to limit the use and to engage more with people in real life if possible. To do both. Like, I think what happens is a lot of people who are able and physically able to get out and around and be in touch with people will spend too much time on social media, and they won't talk to other people. They won't engage with them. And then they'll find out things about that person that they're supposedly friends with. Oh, they went and did this, or they're here with them, and how come they're not including? And it can create a lot of social problems and issues, especially amongst young adults and teens. We're seeing a lot more issues there.
And then just one note from your original question too, about if anyone doesn't have social media. There was someone who mentioned earlier in the chat that they just kind of deleted Instagram off of their phone. So that is, that is something that someone in this audience is engaging as a practice.
It's something you might want to consider trying, and then see how it affects you and how do you feel mentally after you're doing it. Do you see an increase in your mental health? Do you feel happier? Do you feel more confident, more content with who you are and where you're at? If whatever works for you, but most people tend to fare better when they really limit or get rid of it, which is interesting. Okay, so the number 2 problem that we're seeing in terms of people being able to focus and really, understand a topic is something called the Google effect. We've known about this for a while by Sparrow, Liu, and Wigner in 2011. And I made sure to memorize that citation because I'm like, I don't want to have the Google effect happen to me with this citation. So what is the Google effect? It's when you're relying on Google to help you recall information instead of memorizing it and committing it to memory for future recall, because Google is so readily accessible and easy to use that we're like, oh, why should I memorize it? I can just Google it. Google is like a verb, I think, too, for people, right? I can just Google it. And it's so easy to use, and our brains we're lazy. We're what we call cognitive misers, but I think it's a better way. Our brains want to be lazy. It's like, I don't want to put extra effort and energy into this, so I'll just use Google. So Google has almost become like part of our brains in a sense. But the problem is we're less likely to retain information that we're reading about on Google long term. It's causing almost a bit of amnesia or memory kind of problems for many of us. And we're not remembering details or information about a topic in depth. And as a result of that, you can't connect that information to other details on other topics and maybe come up with synthesis of information or a deeper kind of understanding of a topic. So, and the number of people that use Google is increasing dramatically as well. In 2004, it was around 3.5 billion a day increase. We're up to almost 9 billion inquiries a day. So it's just gone up astronomically. So what does this mean? This means that people are really relying a lot more on Google. And if you think about it, that's a little scary. Google has a lot of power, right? And not everything you read about on the internet, I'm sure you all know that well by now, is accurate either. So we're kind of giving a lot of power to Google, and we're not like really learning and going in depth into a topic and really understanding it and reading books on it, understanding it, and really getting a really thorough understanding. And we're like, oh, we'll just Google it. And as a result of that, when you read something online, I'm going to talk about this later if we have time, you're less likely to remember it long term, believe it or not. It's something called the digital detriment. So when you read something online, because you use Google so much, your brain kind of thinks, oh, this isn't really that important. You don't really have to pay that much attention to it. You're not going to have to remember it later on. When you read it in a print book, your brain is like, oh, this is more important. I need to understand this. And you also have the ability to physically remember a space where you read this. Oh yeah, that was earlier in the page. And you can just flip back to the page. You don't have to like scroll and all that stuff. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit, but Google is really not your friend, believe it or not. Even Google Scholar.
Dr. Strite.
I know people are not happy with me, right?
No, no, people are not happy with you, but I have one quick question since we're on the Google.
Sure.
And this is okay if you are not able to answer this question because you're not sure about the research around it, but do you think the Google effect might be leading to the increase in dementia and memory loss diseases?
You know, I had somebody ask me the same exact question. I did a podcast on this too,
okay,
for, National University, and she got me interested. So I'm like, I don't know, let me look. I think it's more that we're living longer.
Okay.
And there's more people that are in that older age group. So I think, but again, don't quote me on that. That would just be my kind of
where you're at right now. That's okay. That's fair. And
but that's a really good question. And someone else asked me that too.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if that could be a great dissertation topic if anybody wants to.
Right. If anyone's at the beginning, let us know. Just kidding.
But isn't it fascinating?
Yeah.
Like how all this technology is, to me, I'm just so fascinated by how all this technology is affecting us and how we think and how we process information and how we remember things or don't remember things. So you can still use Google. Like it's not going to be like the end of the world or anything like that. Like don't panic about it, but just maybe be more mindful in your use of it. Okay, so recommendations here. Use Google and the internet less often when learning new information or really researching a topic. Instead, try to read a book or an article, maybe even listen to a podcast. Take the time to really explore the topic more in depth and make a strong effort to commit some of the information to memory. So try to memorize things and try to get that part of your brain where you can recall information working again. I think for a lot of people, like, oh, I'll just Google it. You know, I don't need to remember it. Has anybody felt that or you've kind of experienced that in recent years where you feel like, I used to remember things better or no?
Yeah, I feel like yes and no, but I don't know if that just depends on the stage of people's lives as well too, like where they're at, what they're doing, what other factors are going into that. That's just my personal take on it.
Yeah, so try this and see if you do this and if you're starting to feel that that creates an improvement for you. And you might catch yourself saying, ooh, I'm Googling again. You know, again, just being more aware of what you're doing and how that impacts you, I think is important. Okay, and then the last thing is something called multitasking and switch cost. So how many of you have been engaging in multitasking? Has anyone ever done that? I definitely am guilty. I confess I have multitasked and I probably shouldn't have. I just caught something I was doing before a couple of weeks ago before my vacation, and I was doing two things at this pretty much very quickly within switching back and forth. And that's what they call the switch cost. And I emailed a faculty member the wrong file. It was on what I was working on for the other project instead of what he needed. And he was like, Mary, what is this about? Like, this has nothing to do. And I was like, oh, crap, I can't believe I did that. I was surprised that I did because I was multitasking. So constantly switching attention and focus from one thing to the other is really not good. It's gonna lead to something called a switch cost. And switch costs cause stress because we're feeling like, oh, I'm trying to do too many things. My head's going to explode. I don't remember what I was doing. Who was I talking to? And then when you try to switch back from one thing to the other, the research estimates are, it's probably more on the higher end, about 20 to 25 minutes for you to kind of get back to where you were. So you're losing a lot of time and a lot of energy and momentum in what it is that you were doing when you switch back and forth. So multitasking is not your friend. Like try to do less, or, here are some other suggestions. Say no more if you can. Try to do less. Like, I think we have this idea in our society that the more you do, the more valuable you are, the more needed you are. I think that's a wrong assumption. Choose selectively what you want to work on, and think about where you're going to put your energy, and don't overcommit. Another thing that I find is, if you can set aside specific times to answer emails or calls, do that. For example, what I do is I'll do it first thing in the morning. I have an hour where I dedicate to answering emails, and then the last hour before I log off for the day. The reason why I do that was, what was happening before that was I would be working and I'd hear ding, email, ding, ding. And my brain is like, oh, you gotta go look at that. You gotta go see what's happening. So I would have to stop and do it. And then I'd check and then be like, oh, and then I'd start answering that. And then I'm like, okay, wait, what was I doing again? And then I go back to what I was doing, and then ding, ding, ding. And I could barely get any of what I needed to do done for the day. So I'm like, this is not working. So you really need to, okay, I'll answer emails for that 1 hour. And now it's me time. Now that I'm scheduling, what do I have to do for the day? And how am I going to go about doing that? I think you need to have like a game plan for each day. What are you going to do? When are you going to do it? How much time you're going to spend? So if you're not a planner like me, I have a planner. I buy one every year, a daily planner, and I can show you all my daily planners. They're empty. It's like, I don't know why I do it, but I'm getting better. I'm using more of the calendar function in Outlook. And you really want to block off how much time you're going to use, when are you going to use it, and what are you going to do during those times too. I think that's really important. I'm going to talk about that again. I don't know if we're going to have time. So that's a really important thing that I think I had to learn. Did anybody else experience that or go through that? I'm getting some nods from people.
Yeah, we've got some folks in the chat saying yes. I was just giggling because you have this planner that you purchase and then you're not organizing yourself. I feel like we all have done that. We've been like, yeah, we've got it, so we're organized, but then we're like, are we actually going to write in it?
Yeah, I look at my planner and I'm like, what did I do? And I'm like, can I use it from last year and then do it? I'm like, no, probably that wouldn't work. But it helps, even if you just use the calendar in Outlook, to try to like block off like periods of time where you're going to work on things, especially if it's something that I think requires more of your focus. Like if you're formulating research questions for a dissertation or something, that would take a little bit more brain power, something like that. Where if you're just answering emails or phone calls in the morning, and I find it's a nice way to kind of ease into your day too, because it's like something that it's in behavioral psychology, we call it a high P probability task, meaning it's kind of an easy task that you're going to have a high probability of completing successfully. So it kind of creates momentum in your workday, and it helps you to kind of ease into your day instead of like, just like, oh, I got to do this really hard thing first thing. Try to think about yourself too, and what works for you and timing of it. If you can turn the bell off, if you have the little bell, if you figure out how to turn that off, because I was getting that even in the evening, because my computer would be sitting in my desk in my living room, and I would hear it going off at like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and I'd be like, oh, and I'm like, no. Even last night, I'm like, no, just say no. You're not going to answer it. Like, leave it. It'll be there in the morning. But if the bell is off, you might be less tempted to kind of go and check it out. And then, like, I think things we talked about already, put your cell phone away, limit social media use, and take breaks strategically throughout the day too. That's really important. Don't overschedule yourself. Like, take breaks. Don't try to do too much in one day. Your brain will fight you on it, and you're going to get tired, and you're not going to be efficient. Don't try to do so much. It's really not effective. And if you're in a Zoom meeting, if you can turn your camera on, I think it helps you sometimes to be more present, to feel like, okay, I'm more here. Like, you know what I'm trying to say? Like it helps, but not always. Whatever works for you. All right, I know I'm talking fast. I did warn you about that. Okay, so strategies to limit switch costs. Take your time. Don't be in a rush. I think when we're trying to, I gotta get this done, I have to do it, we create more problems for ourselves than we have to. And like I was telling you, I sent the wrong file to somebody and he was like, what is that? You know, because I was rushing. I was trying to do too many things at once. Type A personality people in the room, I feel your pain. I'm definitely, they're very time urgent. For example, when I would go to the grocery store and go shopping, if I had people with me, we would all have to stand on different lines to see whose line was going fastest. That's how type A I used to be. I'm better. I'm working on like, I'll grab a magazine now and like, you have to just chill out, you know, just relax. Or if you've ever had the guy who's like, you're driving in traffic and he's like right on your butt. And you're like, what is wrong with this guy? Like, just go around me. So you're like, whatever, just go around me, or you might get out of the lane. And he's zipping in and out of everyone. And you're like, oh my gosh. And then you roll up to the light and guess who's right next to you? The same person. So that's kind of what I'm trying to say. Try not to be that person. Just try to do one thing at a time. Relax. Know that you'll get it done. And whatever you're going to do is enough. And don't feel like you're not doing enough. Because I think once we start to get that time urgency, I know myself and most people will agree, you make a lot of mistakes and you're rushing and you're not really enjoying it. And you're going to end up at the same place usually when you do that, but in a better state of mind and you'll be less stressed. So something to think about. So again, try to do just one thing at a time. I know for a lot of people, that's like, how is that possible? If you're trying to do too many things at a time, then maybe you need to look at that. You're trying to do too much. Maybe you need to get more help or support, or you need to have stronger boundaries and just be like, no, can't do that. And I think, again, for a lot of people, maybe again, I'm projecting a little here. I think that can be tough to do, but it's important and you will do much better work and you'll be a lot happier and healthier and less stressed. And less switch costs. And then you can develop your ability to focus and pay attention, just like a muscle. There's something called the Pomodoro technique, where you set a timer. So say you're having a day where you're like, I really just don't feel like working today. Have you ever had a day? I know I have had days like that where I'm just like, how am I ever going to get? So you're like, okay, let me do the Pomodoro technique. So you take a timer, or you can even do it on your phone. That's okay. We'll allow that. And you can set it for 15 minutes or 20 minutes or however long you think you can handle, and say, okay, I'm going to work on this for 20 minutes. At the end of that 20 minutes, the timer is going to go off and I'm going to see how I feel. If I still feel like, I just can't do this, then you might tell yourself, okay, then I'll stop. Or you might have a plan where you say, all right, I'll do it one more time. And then if at that point, I really am just done, then you're going to say, that's it. I'll come back to this another day. And believe it or not, this really works. It's very effective. So if you're having a day like that, that might be something for you to think about doing. And another thing, try to schedule your day or even your week ahead of time. So plan strategically, block longer periods of time when you're working on something that really you need to focus on more. And try to think about when you work best too. I know some people are more larks, versus those morning people, or the owls and more night people. So know yourself. When is your brain kind of on and working well? And try to schedule those tasks that require more focus then, and you'll do better. All right. And then, oops, sorry. Yikes, yikes, yikes. So again, I'm probably trying to fatigue. Interesting that we're talking about that now. You're all probably getting tired at this point in the webinar. So again, try not to cram too much into your day. Don't overschedule. I think I kind of shared a lot of this already. you want to try to work to achieving something that I call him C, because I can't say his Mihaly, whatever, I just call him C, calls flow. And that's really where you are, like in your peak level of productivity. You really are on. You're just killing it. You're not even aware of time. You're just so in the zone of what you're doing. And that's really what you want, because that's when you are going to be creating amazing things and doing amazing work with your research or whatever it else is that you're doing. So having enough time to really get into a topic and really have limited distractions and all these types of things is going to help you to get to that flow state. And that's what we want. All right. And again, I will make sure that you all have this to share. So I know I'm going a little quickly, but I think we're just kind of running out of time. So I just wanted to kind of wrap up. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was that digital detriment that I talked about a little bit earlier. So just a quick poll. How many of you prefer digital text or actual print books? Now, I kind of biased you already. I probably shouldn't have said anything earlier.
Oh, I'm actually going to launch a poll for you all to participate. You're welcome to. It's okay. I noticed someone mentioned in the chat already, but you're welcome to answer on the poll that pops up, if you're able to access it. It looks like we've got about 80% participation. So I'm going to go ahead and end it. But I see some other folks put information in the chat as well too. So I'm going to go ahead and end, and then I'll share the results with you. But we'll see what people prefer. Can you see it, Dr.
Yeah.
Strait? Okay.
So it said 58% paper and 42% digital. Interesting.
That's right.
So a little bit of a preference for the paper or print, but I probably biased everyone by sharing a little bit. I kind of gave you a little peek of some of the research. So
I don't know if you biased. I would have to say I prefer printed books as well too, but
okay, good. So there is something called this digital detriment. And basically it says that your comprehension and retention of material is improved when you use print books, but it's when it is nonfiction information. So when it's more like factual, kind of textbooky kind of information. And this advantage was particularly true under time conditions. So when people are being given tests and things later on, if they were reading the material in a print book, they performed better on the multiple choice tests of recollection and recall than if it was on the digital screen. So it's something that we call the digital detriment, and it's been found time and time and time again. So you might be connecting the dots a little bit here and thinking, hey, does that have anything to do with the Google effect? It most definitely does. Because again, our brains are kind of been trained to know, like, oh, it's something you're reading on the screen. I don't have to remember it. It's not important. I can just Google it later on. So it's kind of learned that already. Isn't it amazing how our brains like adapt so quickly to these things? Also visually, it's a lot less distracting when you're reading. It's a lot less demanding on your eyes when you're reading a book. You don't have to worry about blue light. You don't have to have like ads popping up or other things, and you have to like click things to go off. And also scrolling up and down can really be a lot on your eyes, a lot more strain on your brain, believe it or not. You have to process more information. So it's a lot less taxing on your resources in the brain. Isn't that interesting? And you can remember again where in the book it was that you were reading about something. So it's like, hey, I think I read about that a couple of pages ago. So let me go back to that. And it's really easy, again, to go back and forth. You don't have to worry, but the scrolling can really be problematic for people. Isn't that interesting? So what can you do there? You could print stuff out, right? You can print out articles. You could go to the library and get books. I'm not sure, Emily, do you know, do we still have a library function here where if you see a book, you can ask it and request? I know many moons ago, I used to do that and they mailed it to me and I was like, yay. But I don't know, do they still do that?
I actually couldn't find a book through the NU library, and I did an interlibrary loan request, and they sent me the books.
See?
So I did that for, this is not for a course, this is just for a resource that I really wanted. So
great.
they did that, but I was just talking to Zoanne as well too, just I prefer the printed book.
There's a
As of
reason why
now,
you
it's
see that.
yeah, as for now, it is still the ebook. But I will share that in my studies, if I found a book that I knew I was going to use like quite frequently, I did go ahead and just purchase the book because that's who I am as a learner.
Yeah. Well, it seems like there's a reason why too, from some of the research and some of the data on this. So I think I really covered pretty much everything that we talked about today, and some of the things that you can try to do differently to try to help you to really be super sharp and focused and have, all this information that you can recall. Just, you don't have to use Google, nothing. You're not dependent. It's all up here in your brain. And believe it or not, I think it will help you if you can try to do some of these things. And I have references at the end. So if you want to, these are just some suggested books if you want to read, if you don't want to Google.
Can we hang out for a minute on this slide before you go to your references, if that's
Sure.
okay, Dr. Straight?
Sure.
Was there one more item aside from the reference page? I don't want to rush you, but there was a couple of questions that I wanted to get to.
So did I have anything else? I don't think so. I think it was just the references after this. Am I right? Yeah, that was it.
Okay, great.
So does anyone remember what was the color of the hiker on the top of the mountain, the very first of his shirt? What color was his shirt
Oh no.
in the beginning of the seminar? Does anyone remember?
No, but if you do remember anyone, you are welcome to
We
raise
should get like
your
a free
hand.
book or something.
Oh my goodness.
So thank you all for being here. I don't know if anybody wanted to talk more or.
We do have just a few questions that I'd like to ask.
Sure.
First of all, the podcast that you did earlier, is that something that we would be able to access through NU that I could provide to
Yes,
the people?
I have a link to it, so I can share
You
that.
send it to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you share it with me, that would be awesome. And then I will send that in my email to all the participants who registered for the event, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that would be great. Thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
I'm just so fascinated. This is something like one of my research interests. I'm really just so fascinated about how technology is changing us so much, and everything that we do, even like how we work and and it affects our thinking, and we don't even realize it. So
Yeah,
I love talking about this stuff. It's fun.
someone did mention in the chat red, so I'm just gonna give that to
Who
Elizabeth
said that?
Peters, unless Elizabeth Peters said red, but I don't know
She's
if
right.
I don't know if Stephen was about to say red. Were you?
Absolutely. Yes, I was.
So you were
Okay.
paying attention. I'm impressed. That's good.
All right, Stephen, great call on that. Was there a follow-up question, just so I know, Stephen, or?
I said it was maroon.
Oh, Stella.
That's good enough. That's good
Maroon.
enough.
Okay.
That's even better. Actually, I like that. Maroon. She's like more precise in her. She's a fashion person, probably.
She's like remembering it to a T. That's great. Question for you. I'm sorry, Stephen, just real quick, since you're still unmuted, was there something else?
Oh, I just wanted to mention, I think I was the only one who typed me in the chat.
Oh, good for you. You saw that. Good
When
for
you don't have the social media, is that correct, Stephen?
No, there was
It's
there
the
was
first
in
screen.
one of the slides. I wrote in really tiny print on the bottom. If you can see this, you really pay attention. Type me in the chat.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
like, if I can try to show you where it was, because I wanted to see, like, I was just playing little games with you guys to see like who was paying attention. I think it was further.
Oh my
further
goodness,
up
that
here.
is awesome.
I just like to do
good
little
eye,
things.
Stephen.
I like to do little things like that just to make it more interesting. I don't even know where it was now.
That's okay. As you're going back, I am gonna go ahead.
Oh, there
and...
it is, right there. Who is
Oh
paying?
my
See that all the way in the
goodness.
bottom? Who is paying close attention? Type me in the chat.
Oh my goodness.
I love that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that too. And I feel like if we have any teachers in the in the audience today, you should use that in your next presentation. I like that idea.
I was just thinking, there's a great one for your dissertation. Stick that in your dissertation.
When you have your defense, that's so funny.
Yes.
Well,
That's
quick
awesome.
question here. So, there's a concern with just the age of distraction when you're trying to plan with what's going on at home with the family, whether it's kids or pets or significant others, and then trying to get your work done as well too. It's kind of, this person's expressed it's been challenging over the summer. I feel like you've given us a few ideas or strategies on how to be more successful with that. Dr. Strite, is there anything else that you want to kind of just add to that as suggestion?
One of the problems because I also do my more focused research is on remote employees, people who work from home. So that includes students. I think the biggest thing there is having an actual boundary, a physical boundary. So if you have an office or a separate room where you can go into and shut the door and put like a do not disturb sign, like mom or dad is studying, thank you or something, and use please, because that's usually more likely to get people to comply too when you use polite language in your signs. Or if they're like young kids and stuff, because I remember when my son was little, I'd be in the bathroom and his hand would be coming under the door, and it was just crazy trying to get them to be like, leave me alone, I need a little space. So in cases like that, you might want to go to like the library or something and actually physically remove yourself from the home setting and environment if you're able to do that, because I think sometimes it can be really tough, especially if you're in the mom hat or the dad hat, and you have a lot of those domestic responsibilities in the home. You're kind of looked at like, well, you're home, so you could do the laundry, or you just like bring me my lunch. It's just like your time is almost not as valued, but that's where you need to be more like, no, this is my study time and I cannot do anything for you during those times. So maybe even have a family meeting with them and make it a priority so they understand like this is serious. Like I'm paying a lot of time and I'm putting a lot of my energy and efforts into this degree, and I need focus. And I need you to help me and I need you to support me. And this is how you can do that. And be real specific with them. Maybe even get them to help you. And hey, can you do the laundry? Can you take out the trash? Can you do all these things? So you have that time that you need to do your work. Your work is just as important as everyone else's, perhaps even more so. So don't ever wear that and don't accept that it's not true.
I really appreciate you taking the time to add your thoughts on that question. I like Zoanne's comment in the chat. She turns the phone off on Saturdays. It's the study day, so I appreciate that. I also liked the suggestions that you brought to our attention. Just like, hey, do you even know what kind of time you're spending on your phone? And so just trying to be aware of that as well as a first step. But leading away from that into this question, what should our total screen time be per day? Is there a number, including computers and cell phones, right? Because a lot of us are students and we're trying to get our work done as well too. So we might not be able to be, compliant with the recommended time frame during this period of our lives. But is there something that you can share in your research that you found that is recommended?
Yes. So the recommendation, and again, screen time is looked at as separate from work.
Oh, okay.
So it's between 2 to 4 hours a day. You want to try to get it into that zone. Obviously, less is more, but there are some things that you just can't help, and that includes things like Netflix, all those types of things where you're watching movies and things online, or video gaming, all that other stuff too. So that's not even being tracked in your phone. So just remember that.
Oh my
I know
goodness.
we're all like, oh no, now I'm
I know that's
trouble.
no, yeah. And I appreciate your response on that. I am interested to understand the research behind the separation of screen time versus student or work experience, right? Because I work remote, I'm in front of the computer, I'm a student, and I have a cell phone. So I'm all those three things combined. So I am just curious, maybe we can talk offline some other time about
Yeah,
what
we
the
are at high
research is.
risk of this. Our population is at a high risk for
Yeah.
this issue. So it's something we all have to really work on. a little more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Any recommendations for a single parent working full time, trying to do their degree, study habits, or time blocking? I know you gave us a recommendation about making your needs known.
Get as much help and support as you can. If you have young children and you're able to get family members to help watch them, really make yourself a high priority and make your needs higher than what you've probably been doing. I find a lot of single parents tend to do everything for everyone except themselves. So it's kind of a selfless, thankless job. Not always, but sometimes. So do everything in your power to get as much help and support. And when people offer it, take it. Like if your kids are offering to do the laundry, yeah, it might not be perfect. It still might be a little wrinkled, whatever. It's okay. Like let them do it. Get the help that you need and advocate for yourself more. Maybe even ask your employer, hey, I'm going back to school. Is there any way that, you could help me or give me a little more time to do something or whatever, because I'm in school right now. Like really be your own best advocate and friend and try to cut yourself some slack too. Like don't be so hard on yourself and I think that's just true for everyone in general, about getting it perfect or doing it all right. Nobody does. Sorry to burst the bubble there, people, but we're all human. So like
I appreciate the realistic approach at that. And I agree with you in terms of advocacy for yourself and for your needs. And I think probably one of a difficult thing for most people is, I shouldn't say most people. For some people, it's difficult to actually accept the help, right? So it's one thing to say like, I need these things, but then when someone's going to offer you the assistance, then actually accepting it and being like, okay, I can go ahead and do this and receive this. But I do want to share one tiny tip that I received from a navigator that I know. One of the things that she liked to do that worked for her as a student is when everybody kind of calmed down at 8:00, that's when she dove in for a couple of hours because she was a night owl and that's what worked for her. That's obviously not going to work for everybody. And I'm not advocating to say stay up all night, all hours of the night to get your stuff done. But I think as Dr. Streit has pointed to, just understanding what your needs are and what works best for you, and then trying to advocate for that in the best of your ability. In this very busy time of our lives, in the age of distraction, and all of the things that are happening around us at all times, but then trying to remain focused towards that goal.
Sleep. Make sure you're sleeping at night too.
That too.
And turn all the devices, everything off at least an hour or two before you go to sleep. Because otherwise, again, your brain, what is your brain learning? Hey, I'm in bed. How much I should be awake and alert and doing all these fun, stimulating things. And then you're back to be able to go to sleep. Dr.
Streit, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you coming, sharing your ideas, strategies, tips to try to be more successful in the age of distraction. And until the next time, I hope you all have a great rest of your day.